The first book of Achee, chapter 4. An account of Moses, the 10th high priest community who begat Messiah. And it came to pass that Achee saw the house of Israel dwelt in the land of a far country, and their doings passed in this manner for the space of many generations. Now important now an important transformation had occurred among the house of Israel, for they were among the hirelings of the king, and they came to dwell separately from the people of the king, because of their language and custom. And the people of that land kept only a few animals, for they were gardeners along the banks of the river. And it was an abhorrence to them to keep the flocks, and pass throughout the earth in search of pasture, and to move to and fro the land. And they considered those who lived in this manner to be undisciplined and rude. And they refrained from eating or mingling with them. But the king of this land had many hirelings and slaves, and large flocks were required to provide for their support. Thus was the nation of Israel known for its skill in herding the flocks of the king. And it came to pass that Semyaza did not forget the vision of Israel, and he put into the hearts of the kings in this place to make the nation of Israel content, that in this way they could intermingle in marriage somewhat with the people, and also pass out of the land as the hirelings of merchants and shipmen, and thus were they scattered abroad in course of many generations. And those who remained were content, as they were hirelings in the ancient trade of their fathers. And it came to pass that many generations passed in this manner, even until 350 years. And about this time there was a king who arose, whose intent was to make war against nations, and he needed men for war, selected from among the hirelings of Israel, and those who were the makers of bricks, many of which were strong men. And he had caused them to be warriors as hirelings, and he trained them in all the skills of warfare. And it came to pass that many in this way lost in battle, but there were some who remained, who were thus trained for war, and who were skilled with weapons, and who were known for their courage and valor in war. Now the transformation that occurred among them was on this wise. It was the custom among the children of Israel that a son will follow after the trade of his father. Wherefore, over the course of time, the people of Israel began to dwell in separate settlements according to their trades. And in this way, the hirelings trained for war had been gathered into their own area of settlement. And because they were taken from the strong men among the brickmakers, their settlement was near to them. And it came to pass, the king began to build large buildings and great cities of bricks. And there arose a dispute among the brickmakers, where the overseers and the settlement of fighting men came to their aid, and took their side against the overseers, and were willing to take up arms and use them in their defense. And when this matter came to the ears of the king, he greatly feared, for the children of Israel were valiant warriors, and were hirelings, and had no love for his people or nation. And it came to pass that the king became greatly troubled, and he sent many of the men out to be his warriors, insomuch that they could not assemble themselves together. And he ordered that the male children of the warriors upon their birth should be given unto the settlements of the other trades to raise up, or they should be slain. And ever after the kings of this place recognized their error and would not make men of war out of their hirelings or slaves. Now, it was in this way that the people who made bricks took many of the children of the warriors to raise, for they felt gratitude that they came to their aid. And it came to pass that it was under these circumstances that a woman had a baby, a son, who was named Nahabin, which is to say, son of the river. And her husband was one who was away with the warriors of the king. And it seemed to her that he delayed his return, and she feared for her son. As she prayed unto the Lord for her son, the Lord told her not to give the child away, but to make him a basket of reeds and give him to the river, for he was a son of the river. And in this way the Lord would save his life. And it came to pass that she did as the Lord commanded, and with a prayer she sorrowfully committed her child unto the Lord, and she set him adrift upon the river, and the river carried him out of her sight, and the basket became entangled in the reeds of the river, near unto the place where the daughter of the king bathed herself. And when they heard the baby weeping, her heart cried out, and she sent a servant to fetch it. And the servant was one of the children of Israel. And the daughter of the king said unto her, Whose baby is it? And the servant replied, The basket is one made of one by the children of Israel. And the daughter of the king said, I will keep it as my own. It is fitting that I shall have a name like unto the people of Israel. Well, what should we call it? And the servant replied, It is custom among our people to give names of righteousness to our children. So we should call him Moses, for he is drawn out of the water. And so his name became Moses. And the daughter of the king became a mother unto him, and she loved him. And in the course of those days, Moses was raised in the courts of the house of the king. And when he was a lad, he asked his mother, Why is it my name is not like unto those of the house of the king? And his mother rehearsed unto him all her doings wherein he was named. Thus Moses began to know he was one of the children of Israel, and he spoke the language of his mother, for he was learned in all her ways, and he could not speak the language of the children of Israel. Now it came to pass that when he was a man, he was exceedingly curious about the ways of his people, and he would dress himself up after their manner, and thus go among them to discover their ways. And one day, while he was among them, he saw an overseer being cruel unto an old man of his people, and he rebuked him severely, and he prevented him from afflicting the man, and the overseer fled for fear. Now the king had commanded that any disputes among the people of the warrior settlement should be made known to him, but the overseer could not tell who he was. So the men of the king began from that day forth to watch. And it came to pass that in many days after this, Moses went out again, dressed as his people, and he approached two men of his people engaged in a violent dispute. And he rebuked them and said, You are brethren, why do you dispute with one another? And they answered and said, What does a man of Israel, who is from the house of a king, care of our disputes? Do you seek to rule over us, seeing you are of our own people? And Moses was afraid, for he knew that they had found who he was, and they had no love for him, but were willing to discover him to the king. And Moses asked his mother what to do, and she said, My father the king has set his hand against any in the warrior settlement who are rebellious. So prepare to get yourself out of the land quickly until this matter passes. And it came to pass that Moses fled by night with whatsoever provision he could carry, and his mother wept. And after about 1 year he had gone by, she inquired of her servants if they knew who had who had been his mother among the children of Israel, and they knew. And she went into their settlement and made all things known unto them, and that his name was Moses. And she asked them to tell her if he should be seen in the land, for she would reward them. And it came to pass that Moses had traveled for the space of many days, and his provisions were used up. And he sought after the oasis of Midian, and he, being not familiar with the land, knew not whither to find water. And he fell to the earth and said, Now I die. And he slept. And when he awoke, a maiden was bending over him, rubbing his face with water, and his eyes were filled with sand. And he tried to look and said, Are you an angel of the Lord? And she, speaking in the language of those in the land of Midian, did not know of what he spoke. And she gave him to drink and helped him into the shade. And as he was resting himself, a band of men came and were rude unto the maiden and her sisters, and would have scattered their flocks. But Moses stood in their defense, and the men withdrew. And it came to pass that when they arrived home, their father said, How is it that you have returned so soon? And they replied, That the man from the country of the big river helped them, and he was without resting. And their father was named Jethro, and he was a priest of God, for his people had sprang from the descendants of those who dwelt with Shem, and descended from Midian out of the son of Abraham, and his fathers had been driven out from Mabakunshash by a band of strangers, where they had dwelt with the people of Shem for a long time, and thus had remained for generations in the oasis of Midian. And Jethro had knowledge of the heavenly tablets and the works of righteousness of Shem and Abraham, and he loved the Lord, and he called the God of Melchizedek, but the renew but he called the God of Melchizedek, but the renewing of Shabuah had passed with the passing of Israel from the land. For Shem and Sedekwilah had been translated like unto Enoch. And it came to pass that Moses dwelt with Jethro, for he was greatly desirous to know the God of his father. And Jethro taught him, for he spoke the language of Moses, and he rehearsed to him from his memory all that had been handed down to him. For no man knew what had become of the heavenly tablets since Shem, and Moses loved Jethro. And by him he came to the knowledge of the Erkadoshi, and he praised the name of the Lord for his home, that he had sought after in the land of his birth, but could not find. And Jethro rehearsed unto him all the works of the righteousness of the high priest of the holy order, starting with our father Adam. And Achee saw that Moses was filled with the Holy Ghost, and Moses kissed the feet of Jethro and called him father. And he exclaimed, I would that I may dwell among this people for the rest of my days. And Jethro loved Moses. And it came to pass that Moses dwelt after the manner of happiness, and he took the daughter of Jethro to wife, the one he had supposed to have been an angel of God, and her name was Zipporah, which is to say, a happy little bird that skips about. And she was delight unto the heart of and she was a delight unto the heart of Moses, for she was of his people, and was of was of the religion of Shabuah, and her name and that of her father and all her kindred was after the language of Abraham. Even notwithstanding the language had changed throughout the generations, and Moses began to speak the language of Jethro. And it came to pass that Zipporah was a woman of faith, and she taught Moses to live among the Erkadoshi, and she was timid and small in her stature, and they would laugh at the sight of his clothing, for she had saved them since his coming, and they would laugh at the story of his words, that she that she was the angel of God. And Moses knew that he had been brought into this place by the hand of God. And it came to pass that Achee beheld Moses girded about with a leathern girdle, and he saw the happy little bird with him also, clothed in righteousness, and his heart was made glad, and he said, See, I have come unto the knowledge of a brother, who is like unto myself and my Tepharah. And he praised, and he thanked the Lord. Now Moses was a little man like Zipporah, and he was thin and brown and quick of movement, and his righteousness was a pleasant thing unto the Lord. And the Lord took great delight in him, and he had been raised in the courts of the king, but now he dwelt among the Erkadoshi. And the Lord rehearsed unto him all the vision of Israel, and Moses made all these things known unto the little bird and unto Jethro. And it came to pass in the course of those days that the heart of Moses began to yearn over the vision of Israel, and he knew that and he knew that those who remained of the children of Israel did not live in their home, but they lived in a strange country. And once, as he kept Shabuah, he saw a vision of Messiah in all things, and he longed for and looked forward in his heart to the day that Messiah may be born among men, and the Spirit of God began to beckon him. Now it came to pass that his happy little bird bore unto him two sons, the first called Gershom, for Moses had been born in the land of a far country, and there he was a stranger in a strange land. But now he was home in the religion of Shabuah, and he had come unto the knowledge of his fathers and all the doings of righteousness, and he had found his Zipporah. And the Lord kept calling the heart of Moses, and he named his second son Eliezer, for he hoped that perhaps this son could be a help to God in accomplishing the vision of Israel. Excuse me. And on the day Eliezer was weaned, Simyaza came against them, and they had to seek the Lord for comfort. And in this way Moses became aware of the great war against the vision of his father Israel. But Moses was content to live out his days in righteousness with his little bird among the Erkadoshi. And it came to pass in the land of the far country that the contentions among the children of Israel against the overseers grew until the king felt obligated to change them from hirelings to slaves, and put them into servitude before him. And it was the makers of the bricks and the warrior settlements only that were made slaves at this time. And the king had undertaken to build much to affirm his lying vision of glory of the world, and these contentions delayed the building. Thus were these children of Israel brought into bondage about 400 years after they entered the land. And their cries went unto the ears of the Lord, and God remembered their fathers and their works of righteousness and the vision of Jeshurun. Now Moses prayed to God in the land of the king, and he also could write it, and it was his first language, and it encompassed the feelings of his heart, and he dreamed in that language. But while the language of Abraham had changed with the generations of Jethro, it had not been corrupted. Howbeit, the language of the house of Israel had become corrupted with the passing generations, for they were surrounded with the strange tongues, and had not the heavenly tablets, nor the means by which to retain the purity of their language. And the Lord spoke to Moses in the language of the feelings of his heart, even as he would with anyone. And it came to pass that one day Gershom came running to his father, and he said to his father, Come and see, the curious thing is upon the mountain. And Moses and Zipporah went to see, and beheld, the side of the mountain was a bush, and it was burning. And they exclaimed, How could such a thing be? Some strangers some stranger surely sojourns along the way. But in the evening the burning still appeared, and the heart of Moses was troubled, for he knew not what to think. And in the night he arose to see, and behold, the bush still in flames. And Zipporah feared for him to go there, for she knew not what it meant. And it came to pass in the morning, Moses beheld the bush burning, not consumed, and he went, that no one passing by could do such a thing. So Moses set out to see what it may mean. And Zipporah prayed unto the Lord for him, and in her heart she had a foreboding. And Moses drew near and called out, Deborah, here I am. And an angel of the Lord spoke to him out of the midst of the flames and said, Moses, Moses. And Moses was astonished to hear his name, and he wondered if there was someone behind the bush. And he drew near, and the angel said again, Moses, Moses. I am the God of your fathers. Remove your shoes from your feet, for you walk on holy ground. And Moses fell to the earth and uncovered his face, and covered his face with his hands. And the Lord said, I have a task for you, my son, for I will send you on a journey, and I have a great need of you. The visions of your fathers languish, and the children cry out to me. And Moses said, Here I am, here am I, O Lord. What is the journey that I should perform for you? And the Lord said, The children of Israel are put to hard bondage, and their cry is come up to me. And I yearn over them, for they are to be a holy nation, and my desire is to establish them in the land of their fathers. And Moses said, What is it that I can do, O Lord? And the Lord said, Go to and speak with the children of Israel, and stand before the king, and see if he will let the people go. And Moses said, O Lord, I cannot speak the language of the children of Israel, and they think of me as one they will not heed. Who will speak for me unto the children of Israel. And the Lord said, Go and search, and perhaps you will find one, who will stand as a spokesman before you unto them. And Moses said, I do not even know what they call your name. Who should I tell the spokesman it is that sent me? And the Lord said, Tell them that I am the great I am. Loving kindness has sent you. For they know me by that name. And Moses wept. And he said, The children of Israel will not hearken unto my words, for I am nothing before all men. And the Lord drew near, and he said, Arise, my son, and pray whatsoever you will, and it shall be done according to your word. And all the Erkadoshi will obey you. Rivers will obey you. The clouds and the wind will obey you. The mountains will heed your words. And when the house of Israel shall behold all these things, surely they will give heed unto your words. For you are called and have been ordained after the order of Melchizedek, and I am your God. And this day know that I will go before you. This day is the beginning of the time of the decision for the house of Israel. And Moses gained courage, and he said, The staff in my hand, it is of the Erkadoshi. Will it obey me? And the Lord said, Say on. And Moses said, I desire that this staff become as if it is harmless water serpent. And he cast it upon the ground, and it was according to his word. And the Lord said, Take it up again. And Moses did, and his staff again in his hand. And excuse me. And I saw and I understood that Moses knew it not, but it was as though the arm of the Lord was revealed in his staff of wood before his eyes. And Moses said, Will the children of Israel hearken unto the doings of the Erkadoshi? And the Lord said, We will see. And Moses fell down at the feet of the Lord and worshipped, and he said, I will go for you, O Lord. I will offer all my doings according to the desires of your heart. Now what was before my eyes was the Urim, was the staff of Moses, and it was of a tree that by definition is given life, with the feelings of Messiah that feel the spiritual heritage of his people. And the tree is numbered among the Erkadoshi, and so also is the harmless serpent numbered among them, and such serpents are given life by the feelings of Messiah, that the feel that a matter will happen according to the desires of God. And the staff was not magic, but for an instant before the eyes of Moses, the staff obeyed him. And it took all the feelings of the serpent, insomuch that Moses had to exclaim that it even appeared unto him as such, for strong is the spirit of life that is put into all things by the creating hand of Messiah. And it is like unto the arm of the Lord. For when the Lord makes his arm bare before the eyes of all people, and when the mighty one arises from his habitation to present himself unto the wicked, the spirit of life is in all things, shall be seen and known in each and every individual element according to the vision of created purpose. Yea, verily, it will appear therefore before your eyes. And when the arm of the Lord is revealed, it will not be far and it will not be for an instant, but it will be before your face forevermore, and it will even appear and remain before the eyes of all men, even the wicked. And it came to pass that the Lord ceased speaking unto Moses, and Moses put the element upon the fire, and he prayed unto the Lord, and affirmed to all the Erkadoshi that he would be a friend and a brother to them, and he asked them to watch over his little bird and his sons as they went out on the errand of the Lord. And it came to pass that Moses returned unto his lair, and Sephora was waiting for him, and she discerned that he had just come from the presence of the Lord. And she said, Moses, my husband, what is it that the Lord is doing as he passes by? And Moses said, the Lord would send us on a journey into the house of Israel, and if they will choose to love him, he will deliver them unto the fulfillment of the visions of their fathers. And Sephora knew in her heart that suffering awaited her husband, but she held her peace, for the desire of her heart was to obey the voice of the Lord. And it came to pass that Moses waited for the passing of the season of the shearing, and little bird prepared for their journey. And Moses built an altar at the place where the bush burned. And he and Jethro sought the Lord earnestly. And Jethro fasted and mourned in his heart at the suffering of Moses and the affliction of the children of Israel. And it came to pass that before it became too hot to travel, that Moses and his little bird set out on their journey to do the bidding of the Lord. And Jethro traveled with them for 4 days' journey from the water of the oasis of Midian. And there he kissed them all goodbye and prayed a prayer for them. And it came to pass that when they arrived in the land to a far country, that the people of the land supposed them to be merchants passing through the land. And Moses went straightway unto the settlement near the place where his mother had rehearsed unto him where he was found. And he told him his name was Moses, and that he was raised in the courts of the king. And he inquired if anyone should know of the house of his father. And after a time, an old man drew near who remembered, and he did direct unto him the house of the people of his father. And there Moses discovered that he had a brother named Yearn, who had taken Elisheba to wife, who was the daughter of one called Aminadab, and that he was a sister. And that he had a sister named Miriam. And Moses found his father had perished with the warriors of the king, and his wife had also died. And it came to pass that Aaron greeted Moses as a brother, and he rehearsed unto Moses all the doings that had transpired among his family. For Aaron spoke in the language of the king and the overseers, and told him that he was born with the name Nahabin, which means son of the river. And Moses rehearsed unto him all that he had learned of the visions of their fathers, and he told them of their religion of Shabuah and of the Erkadoshi. And Miriam said that the people had somewhat memory of these things, yet no one did practice them. And the people began to gather into the house of Aaron to hear the words of Moses. For one who could speak the language of the king would interpret his words to them. And Moses rehearsed unto them in that house. all the words of the Lord before the bush and the altar, and Miriam was rude to Sephora, and considered that she was not one of the family, even though she had a name from the language of Abraham, for she was righteous, and clothed after the manner of a righteous woman. And Miriam spoke in a language she could not understand before her. So it was a hardship upon Sephora, for Moses only could she speak to. And it came to pass that Sephora made a lair near unto the house of Aaron, and she was content to be with her children. And she would make things for the little children round about, and she would sing unto them. And many of them came to love her. Now after they had became acquainted, and Moses had established his family whereby they could dwell for a while, Aaron called all the elders of that place together, and asked them who they would that should be a spokesman for him unto them. And they all said that Aaron should. And Aaron rehearsed unto them in the language Moses could not understand all that Moses had said unto him concerning the vision of their fathers, and the words of the Lord upon the mountain of the bush. And the elders spoke among themselves, and rejoiced at the news. For some few of them could remember the great I am of loving kindness, and they believed Moses, that God had sent him to deliver them, to be a holy nation unto the Lord. And they were glad that one familiar with the courts of the king would speak to him for them. And all the rest of that year the news spread concerning the doings of Moses by the mouth of Aaron. For all the news of the vision of Israel was a comfort to many of them. And they carefully sought out to question Moses. And it came to pass that they all consented together that Moses should go before the king, to request that they should go out unto the land to offer up to him their prayers and mark Shabuah. And according to their request, Moses went in unto the king, and he told him boldly that he had been raised up in the house of his fathers, and that he had brought his brother Aaron with him, that the king might be assured that he truly did stand in behalf of the children of Israel, for they desired to go out unto the Lord and worship before him. And the king said, I am not of the religion of slaves. What is their God to me? And Moses was bold, and he challenged the king after the manner of the diplomacy of the court. And the king was obligated to accept according to their custom for kings. And Moses declared, the God of these hirelings and your slaves is powerful, even unto the overcoming of the gods of your kingdom. And the king clapped his hands and said, we shall see. When the men skilled in religion of the king appeared before him, and the king supposed that the challenge would be met in a moment, and because Moses offered the challenge according to the custom, he would show forth his doings first. And Moses, as the priest of the Most High God, declared that all the Erkadoshi would obey him in behalf of the God of Israel. And he cast his staff down and asked it to become a harmless water serpent, and it appeared unto them all as one before their eyes. And the men of the king were astonished, and afterwards they spoke with one another for the space of 1 hour, and they declared that they also could do such things. Now Moses knew of the illusions of these men could not cause to appear with their magic, And he stood boldly, waiting for their reply. And they cast down their staff also, and it became a poisonous serpent, and it heaved itself at Moses. Now Moses had taken his staff up while they conversed with one another, but now he had cast it down again, and of their feelings of the harmless serpent with the water staff Moses of were so strong that it overshadowed the illusions of the poisonous serpent, insomuch that none could behold it. But the staff of Moses continued to appear before them all, as a harmless serpent. And Moses declared that the serpent of the Erkadoshi had swallowed up the vision of their illusions of a poisonous serpent, and that matter was a grave concern before the eyes of the king. For he carried the image of the poisonous serpent upon his forehead, even as a high priest of evil would carry a phylactery upon his forehead, and it was the element of wickedness. For a poisonous serpent is defined by the hand of the Messiah in its life with the feelings that man will have his way. And in this manner the king carried upon his person, upon his forehead, which fills his identity, the element of evil that was used to see all the desires were obeyed, and by the workings of the righteousness of Moses. And the Lord God had declared unto the court of the king that the ability of the king to have his desires met were as nothing before the God of Israel. And it was in this way that the power of the God of the king, which he calls the serpent goddess Wadjet, was declared to be of no effect before the face of all of his court. And the God of the slaves had with the harmless water serpent conquered the fierce poisonous serpent of the king. And the king leaped up from his throne, and he took the image from off his forehead, and he cast it at the feet of Moses, and went out before the face of Moses. And he did not acknowledge submission to the challenge according to the custom of the diplomacy of his court. And it came to pass that the challenge of Moses that he put forth against his gods became a sober thing to the king, for he was in the midst of of building great buildings to show himself as a god unto his people and the world. And the king commanded that those of the court to tell the man concerning the staff of Moses, but the news was sent abroad, and the king rose up in anger, and he called all his sorcerers together to inquire of them to the means that Moses used to accomplish the Erkadoshi in obeying him. And they said, it was because of the children of Israel they are praying for Moses, and they fear the strength of their numbers in prayer. And they did not believe that the Erkadoshi could obey him, should he stand by himself. So the king ordered that the people should increase their labors to prevent what he supposed was their support in their prayers for the doing of Moses. Now, it had come about over the course of many generations that the children of Israel had lost the knowledge of the practice of their religion in Moses. Not only had the task of delivering them from the face of the king, he had to reestablish the religion of Shabuah among them, and it was for this reason that he had declared to the people who could speak the language of the king all things concerning the Erkadoshi and the works of righteousness of their fathers. And there were many of the elders of the children of Israel who questioned him in these matters. But also there were many of them who cared nothing to hear of the God of their fathers, but they were intent upon the sorrows for the increase of their labors, and they chided against Moses for the hardship of their labors, and he began to fear for his timid Sephora. And it came to pass that Moses went before the Lord, and he cried, Lord, I have done these things according to your word, but the people do not love your religion of Shabuah, and they complain against me. And the king did not yield before your face, but he is even as one as he was even as one as called as Melchisa. And the Lord said unto Moses, Are you not also a son of the river? Will not the waters and all things therefore among the Erkadoshi obey you before the face of all men? And Moses said, You you have said, Lord. And Moses went again and taught again among the children of Israel, as before he told them to watch and see. It will be the God of Israel or the gods of the king who will prevail. And it came to pass that Moses went into the banks of the river where the king came to say his prayers before the people, and they both knew that the challenge would continue until one yielded, for it was according to his custom. And Moses, son of River, drew nigh, and he waited until the king had finished his great and resounding prayers over the river. And when he was finished, Moses stepped forward, and he called with a loud voice in the language of the king, saying, Panel, would you now show forth this day that the God of Israel is the King of kings, and that any who defy him will have occur unto him of his justice, and be turned red as if you ran with blood. And Moses and Aaron departed out of the midst of the court of the king and the people. Now the lying vision of the king was that he was the God before his people, and he could see all things before the benefit of his people. And the river gods were chief among the gods to sustain all the needs of the people. And thus he was praying over the river on a day according to the phase of the moon, at the rising of the falling of the river with the seasons. And it was in this public way that Moses chose to challenge his river god Happy before the God of Israel and all the Erkadoshi. And it came to pass that on the fourth day after these things, that a red algae began to manifest itself within the waters of the river, and it grew until it choked the air from all the fish, and the water began to stink of the course of that month, and the people loathed to drink the water. And it came to pass that when the new moon again appeared, and it was time for the king to appear for his prayers over the river, that many people were gathered to witness it, but the king did not appear. And the people asked, How is it that seeing the water stinks, that the king did not come to petition to the God Happy, as he has been accustomed these many years? And the thing was noised abroad, that the king durst not show himself before the river, and before the righteousness of Moses. And there were some among the children of Israel who begat to wonder. And it came to pass that Moses went to the king after the waters became sweet again, and he said, O king, have you seen that because of the God of Israel is this God of the whole earth, that the Erkadoshi obey my words? Is it not so? And Moses was bold before the king. And Moses said, You have seen that your gods Wedget and Happy could not prevail over the God of Israel. Wherefore, O king, will you let the people go, so we can worship the God of Israel? And the king was wroth. And he said, I will not let the people go. I will not submit to the God of hirelings and slaves. And Moses said, I am son of the river, as you have seen, and because of the power of the God of and Israel, all the Erkadoshi will obey my voice. Wherever, for beware, for I will call forth out of the river a plague upon you, and I will challenge your frog god, Hectic, and he cannot save you from it. And the king said, should I stand in wonder at the God of Israel? And it came to pass that Moses visited the banks of the rivers, and he sprinkled the water with the element of righteousness, and the warmth of algae in the water, and the dead and the death of the fish. He had brought forth the hatching of frogs in great abundance, and in the self same day, when the king came at the new moon to pray over the river, the frogs began to come forth around his feet, and all the people beheld it and wondered. And the sorcerers and the kings prayed unto Hectic, their frog god, but the frogs came the more, even until they filled all their houses. And the kings called Moses to come forth with haste before him, and he said, Will you call upon your God to remove these frogs? For the people think it was I who called them forth with my prayers, and they are a plague upon the people. And Moses prayed unto the Lord, and asked the Erkadoshi that the frogs should die out, and should die out of the land. And it was so, even as according to his prayer. And it came to pass that the frogs were found in heaps upon the earth, and the land stank, and the great swarms of flies came upon the carcasses of frogs. And it came to pass that Moses saw the kings as he was traveling in the way, and he said unto him, You have seen thus far your gods have been put to flight before the God of Israel. Will you now yield and let the people go worship to him? And the king answered him not a word. And Moses said, All the Erkadoshi obey my voice because of the love of the God of Israel. And you have seen that I am a man both drawn out of water and the son of the river. Wherefore all things of the waters obey my voice. So it be known to you that this day I challenge your God, Resfu, who is your God of lightning, rain, and thunder. Perhaps you had best petition him, and I will call upon the God of Israel, and we shall see who will prevail, God or Resfu. And the king said, We shall see. And he commanded his sorcerers to assemble in their temples, and they proceeded after their manner for many days. And Moses got himself upon a hill, and he bowed himself before the Lord, and Aaron was a witness. And he called upon the name of the God of Shabuah and the lovely one, and he called out to Yasa'al, and to Rachel, and to Abrael, and Aaron sounded the trump. And Moses invited them to show forth their love and power before the eyes of all of Israel, and that they may become convinced to the truth of the visions of their fathers, and that they might have faith in God, and that they may love him. And it came to pass that out of the east a storm arose, such as had never been seen in the land, and the winds blew insomuch that it carried sand into the dwellings, and the thunder shook, and the fountains of the earth, and the lightning flashed and crashed down upon them, and rolled upon the ground, and the rain came into the river, in great abundance, and it hailed and pounded upon their crops, and all the waters swept many of their possessions into the river, and all the people were sore afraid. And the storm descended, and it laid upon the land all that day, and it did not pass by. And the God rescue was as nothing before the God of Israel. And the king hastened himself to call Moses, and Moses came to him as he bid him. And the king said, I will let the people go, if you call upon the God of Israel to cause this storm to pass. For my country is destroyed, even now as the plantings of our fields are no more. And Moses called upon God and all the Erkadershi to cease, and it was so. And the land was silent, and the clouds passed from the land, and it came to pass that the winds had stirred up great clouds of locusts, and after 3 days they began to manifest themselves upon the land, and they consumed what remained of the crops. And the king was wroth, for he for the hurt for he heard the people mocking the building of the great buildings to the fourth of his power as a god before them. Thus he changed his mind, and he would not yield to the challenge of God, of the very slaves who were building the buildings. And it came to pass that about in a half of the multitudes of Israel believed in the God of Moses, but the others were not moved. And Moses waited all that season of winter, and he prepared, and any who would, for the challenge of Amun Ra, the god of the firstborn of the king. At all the seasons he taught all who would by the mouth of Aaron concerning the element of righteousness and repentance. And he established a great protection among them, and shall stand to protect them upon its renewal throughout all the course of the earth. And it was established to protect the religion of Shabuah and the holy nation for all their generations. And he called it Passover. And he taught them that the offering of Adam was unto repentance, but many would not. And the number who believed in Israel was brought in half again, who would desire to love God of the Passover, and spent his might to prepare them to rely on God, and rehearse to him all the visions of the law of virtue, and one of who held Israel as grandfather, for he knew that it would take faith to be awake all that night, clothed and staff in his hand, ready to depart at dawn. And those who believed were halved again. And Moses asked of all who remained that they should prepare the lamb, and that in the self same hour, even as he directed, they all gathered, should eat a meal, and pray to the God for protection, and drink using hyssop, which by definition feels sincerity and belief of all things good. And it came to pass that Moses prepared an altar, and his little bird danced before the altar for the Lord, and restored unto her the dance restored to her the dance lost after Sechet Tequilab, and she prayed to bless the altar, and Moses drew near, and he used it in the element of righteousness before the Lord, and he intervened with the agency to establish that the people of Jeshurun would have the element of repentance, for the element of protection for them against all the wiles of Semyaza and of the far off country. And he prayed, saying, O God, God of Israel, O King of Kings, will you now use this offering that it is before you, and the offerings of all the children of Israel, who now at this moment are offering their prayers to be the element of righteousness, together with your servant, and may it be the element of righteousness to show forth by repentance you will preserve all the children of your holy nation, and that all the wicked will have no such protection in all this, Lord, to show forth that the wicked do not have a sure future in their wickedness, but the righteousness will be preserved upon the earth by the offering of their lives to you, and the element of righteousness unto the presence, even as you shall offer your Son in behalf of all men. Will you, O God, pass over this night and choose between the righteous and the wicked? And will you show forth before them that Amen Ra is nothing before you, and that he cannot protect them, and in truth that he will be the cause of their own downfall before you? And thus Moses used both the prayers of the righteous and the wicked as the element before God. And all the wicked by their prayers, Amen Ra cursed them with their own prayers. And it came to pass on that night among the wicked and among the unbelieving of Israel, they suffered the greatest distress of sickness among their children, and many of them died. Even the children of the king died before his eyes, and it was raining, and a great king of the world, whose lying vision that he was a god, went forth in the early morning hours in the mud until he came to the lair of Moses and Sephora, and he knelt in the mud in the doorway in his royal robes, and he commanded them to take their people out of the land to worship their God. And he said in a whisper, I yield unto the God of slaves. And he wept. And it came to pass that in the rain and in the mud, the few who gathered up their possessions that they had prepared, and that they had fled the land, that they numbered about 1,223 souls, all them people, excuse me. And they came from all the settlements of Israel, but most of those who made bricks were old and young among them, and in their haste they fled with Aaron and his wife Achee, whose name means the God of the covenant, went, and Miriam and his sister of Moses, whose name means the to be bitterly rebellious, went, and all who would in Israel. They traveled for the space of 4 days, until they came unto the sea, until they came unto the shore of the Sea of Reeds, and there they made an encampment. And there they made their encampment. Now in this thing Moses was wise to encamp at the water, for he knew the water would obey him, and the and for he knew the water would obey him. But to those who pursued, it seemed as foolishness to them. Now it came to pass that Achee beheld all these things, and he wept, for he saw that they were few in number, and it was like unto his people, even when they came forth from the great tower, insomuch that many came forth out of fear, and not for their great love of the Lord. And Achee saw that all the hosts of hell were against the vision of Israel, and a king of a mighty nation. And all the sorcerers who devoutly followed after the Derkadershi, and who worshipped Simyaza, were pressing hard against those who went out from among him. And Achee saw that even within the encampment of Israel, Simyaza did find those who would obey him, But the Messiah of Israel followed after them, and a high priest after the manner of the holy order commanded the Erkadershi in behalf, and thus prevailed for the Lord God. And the people camped before the sea of reeds. And on the morning of the 5th day they beheld the dust and the approach of the warriors of the king. And Moses approached the sea, and he raised his hand, and he sprinkled the element of righteousness upon the water. And Sephora sang the water song of Abraham, and he used and that he used when he sought after the water of wells. And Moses said, O Sarael, let it be known this day that the Lord is the God of Israel, and that he has been established to be the King of kings. Therefore, let not this king of an evil nation subdue the holy nation of the Lord, but teach humility unto his warriors this day. O God, please hear my prayer, and let these waters divide before us, insomuch that we may pass over in safety. And it came to pass that the waters obeyed the words of Moses, and the winds blew, and the sea parted before them. And all the people praised the Lord God of their fathers. And all the people swept into the breach. And the very Son of God was at their reward, acting with a mighty hand in the behalf of his people. And it came to pass, the warriors of the king followed after them with shouts, and the sea closed upon them, and many who were in the lead perished beneath the waters, and their bodies were seen floating upon the waters. Now the people murmured, and they did not know how to live among the Erkadershi, and complained against Moses and Sephora, whose hearts were mild and gentle. And all was chaos among the people, and Sephora and Moses could not speak to them in their own language, and Miriam continued in her rudeness towards the little bird. So it came to pass that Moses encamped at some distance away from the encampment of the people, and they would not enter their camp. But it must needs be that if someone wished to consult with him, they came out unto his lair. And Aaron continued his role of representing Moses unto the people. And all the people became accustomed to not seeing Moses and Sephora in the midst of their camp. And Aaron and Miriam will speak out Moses and report his sayings unto the people. And all this was because the people complained against Moses, and he was of a mild spirit. Thus he took their journey and the way toward the land of Midian, and Sephora knew the way, and she could tell how to find water. And if the people were hungry or tired or discomforted in any manner, they complained against Moses and his little bird. And it came to pass, they traveled for the space of many days, even until they came unto the mount of the altar of the burning bush. And they camped beneath the mount at a well of water, and at the old encampment of Moses. And there was a pasture sufficient for their animals. And Moses taught repentance, and the Lord was like a father unto them. And the spirit of their father Israel came near to them, and he yearned over them. And Simyaza followed after them in great anger. When they were hungry, the Lord brought them food, even manna from heaven. And when they were thirsty, he gave them a drink, even if it was out of a rock. And Moses taught them their manner of worship, and established their priesthood and their tabernacle. And he taught them in all the knowledge of their use of the element of righteousness. And it came to pass that Aaron began to do mischief in his heart, and he would not report unto the people the truth of the words and doings of Moses. And and Zephorah Miriam was hard against Zephorah. And it came to pass that the brother of Zephorah passed by in caravan on his way to the oasis of Midian, and Zephorah and her children went with him unto the lair of their father, and Aaron and Miriam were rude unto her, and called her that Ethiopian woman. And Moses was sorrowful. And it came to pass that after she departed, the Lord said unto Moses, that is now expedient that he establish the law of virtue among his people. For Jeshurun had already been called forth from among them by their father Israel. And Moses went up to the mount, and he stood before the altar of the bush of Moses, and said, O Lord, I have done even according to your word, and I have brought out those of the children of Israel who would, and they are now before you, even encamped in the midst of my own land. And Semyaza drew near and mocked Moses, saying, that all the people belonged to him, and darkness overshadowed Moses. But the prayers of Moses prevailed, and Moses walked with God. And it came to pass that after many days of struggle in this manner, the Lord brought unto Moses by the means of a dried pool the tablet of the covenant, and Moses rejoiced to behold it. It was in this way that God restored unto his people the language of the tablet of Shem, and it was hid up in the days of Abraham. Howbeit Moses called it the tablet of Jeshurun, or the covenant tablet of Israel. And the Lord also restored unto Moses the tablet of guidance of God, that was written by Enoch, and when she had not been seen by the man since Zion fled. For the Lord had said unto Moses, he intended to establish among his holy nation a city of God, and by this means the Lord would establish the covenant among his people. And it came to pass that Moses carried these 2 tablets of stone, and he made an ark of gopher wood to hold them. And the tablets were small as they were phylacteries of the forehead, and the ark of the covenant was held in his hand. Notes: this tablet has 4 names in the sealed portion, in addition to those listed in the above verse. Is also called the tablet of Shabuah. Back to the text. Now the tablet of Enoch, which Achee had in his possession, was the first seen again by man since ancient times, when the Lord spoke thus unto Moses, and it had been completed just in 2 days. When the Lord told Moses to make haste and come down from the mountain, for Aaron had corrupted the people. And Moses went down from the mountain with the ark in his hand, and as he drew near, he could hear the shouts and the laughter coming from the camp, and it was on the Sabbath day, and he wept. As he drew near, he could see the people were worshiping an image, the god of the king of Happy, a golden calf. And Moses exclaimed to one standing by, from whence comes this idol? And they said, Aaron caused that the people should borrow gold from their fellows before they fled of the land of the king. And Moses wept, and he fell upon his knees, And the ark had dropped, and it had fell open, and the tablets spilled out onto the dust. And he dashed the tablets upon a stone for the overflowing grief of his heart, and he exclaimed, "O God, how can I place such holy things before the face of those who worship idols? You, O Lord, have overcome and subdued the river God happy before their eyes, and yet they are so quickly turned unto it." About this time the people beheld Moses, that he was come, and they all stood, and they were silent before him. And Moses says, "Who does make idols in your midst?" And they answered, "Aaron." And Moses said, "Where is Aaron, the idol maker?" And Aaron said, "Here am I." And Moses said, "You are the one who has been set apart and established as a priest before God, and you make idols? These people have had the Lord establish his tabernacle in their midst, and all their worship in is in place. And now they pray to Happy on the Sabbath." And Aaron answered him not a word. And Moses said, "Grind your idol to powder, and scatter it abroad on the north side of the camp." And Moses went out and called upon the Lord. And Moses asked God to forgive Aaron, but the Lord would not. And the Lord declared unto Moses that Aaron was not repenting, and mischief yet remained in his heart. And Moses went down from the Lord, and he declared unto the people, even to as many as were able to understand the language of the king, that all Aaron and all his sons of his lineage after him could not sprinkle the element of cleansing upon the unclean for purification on the Sabbath for all their generations, because he had polluted the Sabbath with idols. And it came to pass that Aaron was wroth, and he worked the works of deceit, and he would pretend to have spoken unto Moses, and bring back a report. And this man Aaron would also pretend unto the Most High priesthood, and he imagined clothing of finery and gold for the ark of the covenant, and much status and wealth for himself and his sons after him. And he transformed the tabernacle of Moses. And thus did Aaron the idol maker pervert the eyes of the Lord, the doings of God, as to the priesthood, after the manner of the holy order. For has God not said that he himself would hurl unto man their calling according to his will, and that such callings come not by the will of men, nor were they called because of the father or mother. Therefore Aaron sought to establish that now the priesthood was to come by the blood of lineage. Woe. And Achee beheld the abominations of Aaron before the face of God. And Aaron desired wealth and great glory to be passed unto his sons. But the language of repentance came to him by a mighty hand of his two oldest sons, who stood before the people as if to act within their appointed duty as priests, and who were in the minds of the people to inherit the high priesthood, worked the works of sorcery. And they brought their strange fire, and placed it upon the altar of Moses with the tabernacle. And it was a high priest altar after the manner of the holy order. And Moses had consecrated the altar unto the Lord, and prayed that it could only be used to bless the God of Israel. Even so, it came to pass that when Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, placed their fire of sorcery upon the altar, and were offering up their incense upon it to the strange God, with a stone of the altar burst asunder for much heat, and it killed them both. And an uproar went throughout the camp. And the people said, what is it to become of us without the lineage of Aaron? Soon after these things, Zipporah returned to look after the welfare of Moses, and to inquire as to how he fared. And she came traveling with her father and brother, and she found that there had been one continual round of complaints and murmurings against her husband. And Jethro, her father, whose name means to judge, advised Moses as to what manner he should give his word to judge unto others of the children of Israel. For he said that Moses should take 12 of the elders of Israel and appoint them to judge the people in their disputes. And it so happened that at that time of the arrival of Zipporah, the people were hungry, and they rose up against Moses. And Moses went alone unto the Lord, and his little bird followed at a distance, weeping and praying for him. And Moses knew it not. And Moses cried out, Lord, the people will stone me, for they desire now to have flesh to eat. Wherefore have you afflicted me? Have I not found favor in your sight, that you have laid all the burden of this people upon me? And I am the father of this people, that I should carry them and feed them like unto a suckling child. O God, I am not able to bear this people any longer. If you shall require this of me, please kill me out of the hand, and thus show favor upon me. And the Lord said unto him, Moses, take your 12 men as my servant has spoken to you. Let them be of the elders of Israel, and set them apart, and lay your hands on them, and I will give unto them a charge as to the burden of their people, and I will take it off you, my son, and then you may go in peace. Well done, my good and faithful servant, for you have fulfilled all the desires of my heart concerning them. Go in peace, my son. And the little bird heard the Lord, and she was comforted. And it came to pass that Moses did as the Lord commanded, according to the words of Jethro. And he chose out 12 elders of Israel, and he laid hands upon them, and they were charged with the burden of judging the affairs of the people. And he departed from among the children of Israel. Now all these things took place in the 2 years and 2 seasons from the time Moses arrived in their midst until he departed. And Moses was in this way cast out from among them. And these people wandered for 40 years, and their wicked felt no restraints. And in those years they multiplied, and they saw not Moses again for 30 years. And it came to pass after these years passed, that the host of Israel came upon the encampment of Moses and Zipporah. And it was in the 39th year, and many had heard of Moses, howbeit the most of the old generation will pass away. And Aaron and Miriam also had passed unto the judgments of God. And it came to pass that the people were desirous that Moses should rehearse unto them all the things of the Lord that had transpired among them in this day. And Moses attempted to rehearse unto them all that had been done under his hand, but only a few old people could still speak and understand the language of the king. And what he rehearsed unto them became known as the Book of Devarim, which by interpretation is perhaps the words that are known of God. Hmm. And all of what was spoken by Moses was written from the memory by the people many years after in the land of Israel. And it came to pass that the Lord commanded Moses to write brass upon plates of brass all his doings and all the things he had spoken unto them. And Moses wrote it upon brass plates in the language of the king of the far country. And Moses during the course of that year delivered the book unto the elders of Israel, and they beheld it and exclaimed, for and they beheld it and exclaimed, what good is this book of brass? For we cannot read the language of the king. And they cast it at the feet of Moses. But Moses was now very old, and his son Eleazar bent down and laid hold of it, and he took it. And he quietly went and placed it into the treasury of the tabernacle where it was carried about, and not looked upon for more than 800 years. And it was written as a testimony against them, and all their wickedness and cruelty of Israel during the 38 years were attributed to Moses, and God is judge. And Moses is the brother of Panal, and he was named Messiah, King of Kings, and he established the holy identity of nations, and provided that the Lord could have the covenant among a holy people. And thus ends the vision of Achee of the 10th high priest community.